Hi, friends. We are back and we are still in Chapter 2 of Unit 1, the resolution of private disputes. We have talked about personal jurisdiction in the last video. Remember, for the difference between trial and appellate court, see your handout. We're going to talk about subject matter jurisdiction. Remember, jurisdiction is the power of a court to hear a case. And with personal jurisdiction, it was what state do the courts have the power to enter a judgment or hear a case over a defendant? And it was about the actual fairness to the defendant, right? Okay. Subject matter jurisdiction has to do with, are we going to state court or we're going to federal court? So I've decided I can take you to court and I can decide as the plaintiff, as long as I have jurisdiction over the defendant, I can decide as long as I have jurisdiction which state, if I have multiple states, okay? Subject matter jurisdiction is once I'm in that state, am I going to go to federal or state court? So you have to first determine, once that case is filed, is it in the proper state that has jurisdiction? And then does this federal court have jurisdiction or does the state? Here's the kicker. The state pretty much has jurisdiction. So the question is, should we be in federal court if we're in federal court? Okay, here is what we have to look at. The power to hear state, federal, or maybe sometimes both. So, subject matter jurisdiction is in a federal court only if there's a federal question or what we call diversity jurisdiction, okay? A federal question means that the only court that can hear it is a federal court. Okay, so cases that are based on federal law. Okay, if it's filed because of a federal law, then the federal courts can hear it. And only the federal courts can hear it. Now, diversity jurisdiction is either court. You get to decide. And what that means is the plaintiff and the defendants have to be from different domiciles. Okay, and that's where you live and intend to live if you're a person. Corporation is each state you're incorporated and have a principal place of business. That's your corporation. So that's the first thing for diversity jurisdiction, okay? The second thing is it has to be over $75,000, okay? So that's diversity jurisdiction. So both state and federal court have subject matter jurisdiction on concurrent jurisdiction, which is that diversity jurisdiction, okay? And that's part of federalism, right? The federal courts can only hear federal questions, right? State courts can't. State courts can hear everything else, and they both can hear cases where the plaintiff and the defendant are from different domiciles and the amount in controversy is over $75,000, those two requirements. Then I get to choose. So let's see how this works. There's a case called Hertz Court versus Friend. Melinda Friend and John New sued Hertz Court for violation of wage and hour. And the plaintiffs, okay, Melinda and John, were from California. And they said, well, and so is Hertz. So if they're both from California, then guess what? You can't go to the federal court because they have the same jurisdiction. So they filed the lawsuit there, and Hertz filed a motion saying, nope, we need to move this to federal court because there's diversity jurisdiction. And so if there's diversity jurisdiction, the defendant can decide, I want to be removed to a court, okay? And the district court agreed. So then Hertz filed an appeal and they affirmed the trial court. And they said, you know what? We want this to go to the U.S. Supreme Court because there's so much discrepancy with the different courts on how they handle this issue. What does it mean for a corporation where they're domiciled? Okay, so it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, here's a note here. This is strategy, right? Hertz doesn't want to be in the state court because they have probably an upper hand in the federal court. Federal courts have more rules, they have more regulations, they're more formal, and Hertz was probably used to dealing and they wanted to be the big mans there, right? So they want this to go to federal court, but they have to figure out, how am I going to get to federal court, right? It's not a federal question. Wage and hour that they violated was under the state law, which they have federal laws, but the state can also have their laws as long as they don't conflict. So they said, we have to have diversity jurisdiction. Well, according to Friend and New, they said, hey, we're California citizens. So is Hertz. It has to go to state court. Hertz said, nah, they're California citizens, but we're a New Jersey citizen. So it's federal diversity, so it can go to federal court if we want. So let's remove it. The issue was, does the federal court have diversity subject matter jurisdiction? And the court said, yes, it does. It said the principal place of business under the federal statute referred to where a corporation's officers are directed, controlled, and coordinated. It's the nerve center. It would normally be their headquarters if it's not simply an office for board meetings. But the nerve center has to be a single place, and it has to be where more general activities are, right? And it's simple to apply. And so it's corporate headquarters were one and the same, located in New Jersey. So this is going to be where their nerve center is. All right. So the disposition is that they vacated and remanded and said, guess what? They get to take it to federal court if they want. Let's take a second to talk about venue. Venue is decided after the court has jurisdiction, and that's where are we going to hear the case? And it's where it's the most proper or convenient location for the trial. Okay, this is important because procedurally, if you move the trial to a different court, you go by the procedures of that court. The substantive law stays in the same as it would have been had it been in the other court. In contracts, a lot of people use a forum selection clause, and they say if any disputes arise, this case will be heard in this court. And it gives a party an upper hand, and it's strategically something people put in to their contracts. So, in a nutshell, personal jurisdiction talks about where the defendant resides, domicile, right? When we talk about subject matter jurisdiction, we're talking about where the, is it going to state or federal court? Okay. And is it a question of federal law? If so, only federal court. If not, anything can go to the state court, and either court can hear. Plaintiffs and defendants are different places, and the amount's over $75,000. If you have any questions, because this can get a little complicated, contact me and I can walk you through it.